We have some major breaking news. Sean Diddy Combs has just filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit against NBC Universal for the making of Diddy, the making of a Bad Boy documentary.
No, I get it. So you see some guys struggling with that. You see Bieber struggling with that. You see some of these guys struggling with that.
They can't get it out of their head. They can't get it out of their head.
Let's start with a question that no one seems willing to ask. What if Michael Jackson's untimely passing wasn't just the result of poor decisions or bad luck, but part of a calculated effort to silence one of the most influential and enigmatic figures in music history? Stop for a second and think about this. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, a man whose influence spanned continents, whose name was synonymous with global stardom, and whose power extended far beyond the stage. Now imagine what it would take to bring someone like him down. It wouldn't just be a coincidence, would it? No, it would take precision, planning, and most terrifyingly, cooperation from people in high places. That's the foundation of the conspiracy that's been bubbling beneath the surface for years. And now, with recent revelations involving Sean Diddy Combs, it feels like the pieces of this sinister puzzle are finally snapping into place.
It sounded crazy, like I said before. They said that 2,300 people reached out to the law firm, and out of the 2,300 people, I guess they decided to go with just a little over 100. Which seems like it's they just put out the number and everybody's calling to see if they can get a check.
It's insane. It's insane. Now, again, he did say that nothing has been filed yet because he says he wants to make sure that they do their due diligence and get this right.
Here's where it gets chilling. Conservative commentator Candace Owens, never one to shy away from controversy, recently dropped a bombshell. The idea that Michael Jackson's demise wasn't an isolated tragedy but part of a much larger network of manipulation, blackmail, and power games operating at the highest levels of the entertainment world. Owens alleges that this isn't just about shady contracts or tabloid drama, it's about a system that thrives on control, secrecy, and the ability to keep its insiders in line no matter the cost. And according to her, Diddy might not just be a player in this system, he could be one of its key architects. Or, perhaps more disturbingly, one of its pawns. Let's not forget, Michael himself was no stranger to paranoia. He spoke openly about feeling hunted, about being surrounded by people he couldn't trust. Friends and family have come forward over the years with claims that he feared for his life, that he believed forces were conspiring to take him down, and maybe he wasn't wrong. What if the very people he thought were protecting him were the same ones pulling the strings? Enter Fahim Muhammad, a name that's been quietly circulating in the shadows of both Michael Jackson's and Diddy's worlds. Muhammad, who served as Michael's head of security, was one of the last people to see him alive. He was also one of the first to find Michael's lifeless body in his bedroom that fateful day in 2009. Fast forward a few years, and guess where Muhammad ends up? Working for Diddy, managing his security team with the same level of access and authority he once held in Michael's inner circle. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's a hard pill to swallow.
Not surprised with the decision. I'm surprised that Judge Subramanian entertained it. He held a 2-hour hearing, which we were covering live, and he issued a 5-page written order. Most other judges, including the 2 previous judges, to consider this issue, summarily denied the bail motion. I think a lot of it stems from Judge Subramanian being a newer judge. This is a Biden appointee.
Muhammad's presence in both narratives feels like a thread begging to be pulled. At just 21 years old, he was handed the monumental responsibility of being Michael Jackson's chief of security. Not just a bodyguard, but the gatekeeper to one of the most famous men on the planet. How does someone so young, with no prior experience in high-profile security, land a job like that? And why was he the one tasked with handling the aftermath of Michael's demise, coordinating with authorities, and shaping the initial narrative of what happened that day? These aren't small questions, and they don't come with easy answers. Now consider this. After Michael's demise, Muhammad seamlessly transitions into a similar role for Diddy, but his duties go far beyond the typical scope of a security chief. He's not just protecting Diddy from paparazzi or unruly fans. He's allegedly involved in covering up incidents, managing crises, and, according to some lawsuits, making inconvenient problems disappear. It's the kind of role that comes with immense power and immense responsibility. And it raises an unsettling question. Was Muhammad placed in these positions because he was trustworthy or because he was useful to someone else's agenda?
And he is very, very dominant. Like, he wants to control the situation. He wants to control his inner circle. He wants to make everyone have a good time and enjoy his parties. And so, you know, it is scary because you think, you know, this person or possibly his social network or the people he's around could make or break your career.
Here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Owens claims that Diddy's current legal troubles, spanning everything from accusations of misconduct to allegations of trafficking, are part of a much larger web of corruption and control. She draws a direct line between Diddy's scandals and the forces that may have targeted Michael Jackson, suggesting that both men were at different points in time either beneficiaries or victims of this shadowy system. And if that's true, it means Michael's demise and Diddy's downfall aren't isolated events. They're chapters in the same twisted story. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's one detail that's been driving conspiracy theorists wild, and it involves something straight out of a Hollywood thriller: secret tunnels. Yes, you heard that right. The theory goes that Diddy's luxurious Los Angeles estate, complete with its opulent grotto and underwater swimming tunnel, might have been more than just a playground for the rich and famous. Some believe it was part of a network of hidden passageways connecting the homes of Hollywood elites, including, allegedly, Michael Jackson's property. It sounds ridiculous, like something ripped from the pages of a spy novel. But then you remember the rumors about the Playboy Mansion having similar tunnels, and suddenly, it doesn't feel quite so far-fetched.
Everyone keeps saying to me, like, how did you keep, why did you keep going? Why were you there? I'm like, it literally is around me. If I don't stay at home, this is the atmosphere I'm in. Like, I have no choice.
The speculation gained traction after a doctored screenshot, purportedly from a major news outlet, claimed investigators had discovered these tunnels during a raid on Diddy's home. While the picture was quickly disproven, the concept refused to perish. After all, Diddy's estate is known for its extravagant features, including a lagoon-style pool and a grotto accessible via an underwater passage. Could it also house a hidden network designed for discreet comings and goings? And if so, who is using it and for what purpose? The implications are as fascinating as they are unsettling. Of course, the tunnel theory is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. What's undeniable is that Diddy's home has been the subject of intense scrutiny in recent months, with federal agents conducting raids and seizing evidence as part of an ongoing investigation. Officially, the raids were tied to allegations of misconduct, but the timing and scale of the operation have fueled speculation about what authorities might really be looking for. Hidden compartments? Secret recordings? Evidence of a larger conspiracy? The possibilities are endless. And the silence from both Diddy and his legal team only adds to the intrigue.
The flight was always going to be a tough argument for the government because obviously Combs voluntarily came to New York. He surrendered his passports through his lawyer. He could have fled after the March raids of his Miami and Los Angeles homes, but he didn't. He has access to 2 private jets. I think it was a tougher argument. I know the government made the argument, but clearly the best argument was the dangerousness and the witness tampering. They had much more evidence with it.
But let's bring it back to Michael for a moment. One of the most haunting aspects of his story is the sense of isolation that permeated his final years. Surrounded by people who claimed to care for him, he often spoke of feeling trapped, manipulated, and betrayed. His family has long maintained that he was a victim of foul play, pointing to the suspicious circumstances surrounding his demise and the questionable characters in his inner circle. And when you start connecting the dots, Michael's fears, Muhammad's role, Diddy's alleged involvement in a broader system of control, it's hard not to wonder if they're onto something. The question that lingers, though, is this. If Michael Jackson was indeed targeted by a powerful network, why? What made him such a threat that he had to be silenced? Some point to his ownership of valuable music catalogs, including the rights to the Beatles' songs, a portfolio worth billions. Others suggest it was his willingness to speak out against the industry, to challenge the status quo in a way that few artists ever dared. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. Michael Jackson wasn't just a pop star. He was a force of nature, a man whose influence extended far beyond his music. And that kind of power doesn't come without enemies.
Well, first of all, I can only imagine how sloppy Sean Combs was with evidence when he got busted with those 2 machine guns or 3 machine guns with the altered serial numbers. So I really don't trust Sean Combs or the people around him's ability to properly cover up anything. So I envision that you're going to see at trial payments from his Amex for flights for people, straight payments directly from his company to people.
As for Diddy, his story is still unfolding. The lawsuits, the allegations, the raids, they're all pieces of a puzzle that's far from complete, but one thing is certain, the walls are closing in. And as more details emerge, it's becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss the idea that his downfall isn't just the result of bad choices or bad luck, but part of something much bigger, something darker. something that might finally expose the truth about what really goes on behind the closed doors of Hollywood's elite. And just when you thought the story couldn't delve deeper into darkness, the connections, the suspicions, and the sheer audacity of what might have been happening behind the scenes start to paint an even more sinister picture. Because if Michael Jackson's final days were marked by isolation and betrayal, then Diddy's current storm of legal chaos feels like a mirror of that eerie playbook. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about two men who found themselves caught up in a whirlwind of power and paranoia. No, this goes far beyond individuals. What we're dealing with here might just be the blueprint of how the entertainment industry systematically builds, breaks, and buries its giants.
Time frame is important because this happened in hotels, in places that have surveillance, that there's records that could be consistent with his testimony about when he alleges that these parties took place. He probably has his own information about who attended the events. When you're somebody like Sean Combs and you're such a celebrity and you're engaged in this type of behavior, people around you are memorializing it on their own.
Let's keep peeling back the layers. Michael Jackson, as we now know, had every reason to be terrified. He wasn't just a megastar, he was an empire with his catalog ownership, something that still sends shockwaves through the music world. He wielded power that made him untouchable in some ways, but also undeniably dangerous to those who stood to lose control. And here's where it gets chilling. Diddy, for all his success and charisma, has been accused of using that same blueprint of control to maintain his position at the top. But when you look at the lawsuits piling up against him, they don't just scream bad behavior. They hint at a larger system. A system that thrives on secrets, leverage, and absolute submission. Take the allegations about the hidden surveillance cameras. The idea alone is enough to make your skin crawl. Reports suggest that Diddy's homes, those sprawling palaces of indulgence and extravagance, were wired for more than just security. Hidden cameras allegedly recorded everything, and I mean everything. Guests, associates, even some of the biggest names in the industry are said to have unknowingly been captured on tape. But here's where it gets really twisted. Those recordings weren't just for personal amusement. No, they were leverage, allegedly used to keep people in line, to silence dissent, and maybe even to ensure loyalty through fear. Imagine the power that comes with holding someone's darkest moments in your hands. Moments they thought were private, moments that could ruin them if exposed. It's not just manipulation, it's weaponized trust.
You know, if you say the wrong thing or you complain or I don't know, there's an element where you're just, I guess manipulated in a way to make you feel like, oh, you have to please everyone around you. You can't say anything wrong. You don't want to say a bad thing, or when they're constantly asking you, would you like to do drugs? And you're like, well, I don't do drugs. And they're like, well, why don't you do drugs?
And yet the cameras are just one piece of the puzzle. The whispers about the infamous parties, events so exclusive they were practically mythical, add another layer of intrigue. These weren't your run-of-the-mill celebrity gatherings. These were high-stakes affairs, where attendees were allegedly required to sign agreements ensuring their silence. What went on at these events? The rumors range from the bizarre to the outright sinister. Some attendees have claimed they witnessed behavior that left them shaken, behavior that blurred the lines between consent and coercion. And here's the thing. The parties weren't just about indulgence. They were about control. Because once you've seen something you can't unsee, you're part of the system. And if you dare to speak out, well, let's just say the consequences were reportedly severe enough to keep most people silent.
I don't know the consequences of what that could have been. So I didn't really talk about it. I should have gone to the police. I should have said something other than to my agent. I'm just thankful that there was somebody there. There was somebody at that party who helped me, because I could have ended up in a really bad situation.
But silence can only last so long, and now the cracks are starting to show. The lawsuits against Diddy aren't just allegations. They're a roadmap of a man's rise and possible fall, intertwined with a system that seemingly enabled and protected him for years. And the connections to Michael Jackson's world, they're impossible to ignore. Take Fahim Muhammad, for instance. His role as a fixer, a man who could clean up any mess, who knew how to make problems disappear, feels eerily reminiscent of the shadowy figures who surrounded Michael in his final years. Muhammad's involvement in Diddy's camp raises questions that are almost too big to answer. Was he merely doing his job, or was he part of something much larger? Something designed to protect not just Diddy, but an entire network of power players.
Now, this particular defense attorney's reason for quitting wasn't really a reason at all. making his departure a lot more puzzling.
And then there are the tunnels. Yes, the tunnels. The idea of hidden passageways connecting Diddy's estate to other properties, including the notorious Playboy Mansion, might sound like something out of a spy thriller, but the whispers won't go away. And when you consider the mansion's history, its own alleged network of secret corridors used for clandestine meetings and unthinkable activities, the parallels become impossible to dismiss. What were these tunnels for? Were they simply a luxurious quirk of the ultra-wealthy, or were they part of a system designed to facilitate activities that couldn't see the light of day? And if so, who else knew about them? Who else used them? The questions keep piling up and the answers remain just out of reach. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. This isn't just about tunnels or cameras or parties. This is about power. Power that corrupts, power that isolates, power that destroys. Michael Jackson, for all his fame and fortune, was ultimately a man who felt powerless in the face of a system that seemed determined to control him. And now, as Diddy's empire begins to crack under the weight of these allegations, it's hard not to see the parallel. Both men were at the top of their game, both men wielded influence that few could match, and both men seem to have been caught in the crosshairs of a system that demands absolute loyalty and punishes those who dare to step out of line.
Now we've done 3 others where we've laid out the prosecution case. This time, we're talking specifically, what is Diddy's defense? And we decided to test it with a mock jury, and it is fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating, keeping in mind that the real jury will be sitting down to do this. The trial starts first week in May.
But here's where it gets even darker. If the allegations against Diddy are true, if the stories about blackmail, coercion, and control are even half as bad as they seem, then what does that say about the industry as a whole? Because let's be real, Diddy didn't operate in a vacuum. He thrived in a world that rewarded his behavior, a world that looked the other way as long as the hits kept coming and the money kept flowing. And if that world could protect him for so long, who else is it protecting? Who else is hiding in the shadows, pulling strings and silencing voices? And let's not forget the media's role in all this. The silence from major outlets, the reluctance to dig deeper into Diddy's scandals, speaks volumes. Compare it to the relentless coverage of other public figures who've fallen from grace, and the double standard becomes glaringly obvious. Why is the media so hesitant to go after Diddy? Is it fear? Is it loyalty? Or is it something even more insidious? A recognition that exposing him might unravel a web of connections that's too dangerous to confront.
You know, there's a short life in
Why do you think that is, what the creative side is?
Well, because losing out money, you got to take. You're going through so much to try and deal with life.
As the lawsuits continue to mount and the investigations dig deeper, one thing is clear. This story is far from over. The truth might still be buried, hidden in those tapes, those tunnels, and the memories of those who've chosen to stay silent. But for how long? How long can a system this corrupt sustain itself before it collapses under its own weight? So what do you think? Are we looking at the fall of one man or the exposure of an entire machine? How deep does this go, and who else might be implicated before it's all said and done? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.